There we go. Welcome everyone to the first of the 2022 official Comrades Marathon webinars. This is the Novice webinar to kick things off, which is pretty exciting. It's good to have everyone with us. We're going to get into some formal introductions in just a moment. A lot of people still clicking on. If you have just joined us, please do let us know in the chat that you can see and hear us. Let us know who you are, where you're joining us from. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how nervous are you that it's your first Comrades in 2022? Let us know in the chat that everything is working exactly the way it should. There we go. Alexia is saying, I can see and hear you clearly. Perfect. Peter saying hi. Awesome. Looks like everything is working. I love it. I love it. I love it. Ravi's in Durban. Holy smokes. I can't read that fast, gentlemen. That is crazy. All right. So Paul's saying all good from 4 ways. Alan, how's it to you? Cool. Looks like everything is working perfectly. All right, let's get straight into things. If you're running your first Comrades, you're definitely in the right place, okay? We're going to show you today how to arrive on race day well prepared, injury-free, and confident, knowing you've done exactly what it takes to run your very first Comrades Marathon. So just a couple of formal introductions. With us today is the official Comrades Marathon coach, Lindsey Parry. A very good evening to you, Lindsey. For the past 15 years, Lindsey's coached amateur and professional athletes to PRs and podiums of some of the world's most prestigious races. He's coached back-to-back winners at the Comrades Marathon in Caroline Wassman and Shanae Bosman as well. He's coached thousands of runners to their very first Comrades medal. He's been to 3 Olympic Games, 2 Commonwealth Games. He's a pretty decent runner in his own right, a marathon PR of 2:45 and a Comrades PB of 7:11. Lindsey, nice to have you with us today.
How's it, Brad? Let me get my microphone in front of me here. Otherwise, I'm going to sound like I'm in an echo chamber. Yeah, looking forward to this evening. Welcome, everybody.
Fabulous. All right. And also with us today is Devlin Eden, who's a sports scientist, a strength and conditioning specialist with us here at CoachParry.com. Performance is a priority for Dev, be it in the gym, the lab, or out on the road and trails. He's a keen runner and cyclist as well. He's completed the Absa Cape Epic. We haven't put it on there too, but a recent Ironman finisher as well. Devlin Eden, nice to have you with us tonight as well.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, excited to be here and excited to share some knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so you know who I am, I'm known as the guy who lost to Backstreet Boy en route to running his very first Comrades. I've finished 3. I've done 5 Ironmans. We're going to get into that a little bit later on as well. But just to let you know what we are going to run through today, we're going to be covering what makes the down run unique in Comrades, where you should be right now. We're going to put your mind at ease about that, what you should be focusing on next, as well as some equipment to look out for. We're going to talk strength training extensively, and then there's some motivation and resources to share with you towards the end of this webinar as well. Just so you know, if you have just clicked on, welcome. This is the first in a big series of webinars. We're doing a general one on Thursday. This is just for novices. We're going to be talking specific for people brand new to running Comrades. If you wouldn't mind letting me know in the chat as well. When we talk novices, we're talking your very first one or your first down. If you've done it up, the down's very different too. So you definitely fall into the novice category if you're doing your first down. Please let us know in the chat if you've done the up or the down. Cool. Linz, I'm going to hand over to you. I see there's 1 or 2 people who are struggling to connect audio-wise. You can jump straight into things and talk about where we should be going. We'll bring Dev back in just a moment.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brad. Yeah, so I think the important thing for everyone to understand is new on the call is that Comrades presents a unique challenge. So if you are doing your first Comrades, obviously you're a novice, you don't know the difference between the up and the down. If you have done an up Comrades, then you are still a novice because the two are really unique challenges. And I think what is very important to understand with the down run is that it has this unique challenge of having lots of climbing in the first half and then a lot of climbing as you leave halfway. So the majority of the climbing does happen in the first half. You hit the highest points on the route around the 26, 27K mark. And then there's a fair amount of downhill into halfway, and then from halfway there's a monster climb out of halfway. And then the unique challenge at Comrades is that from that point, with roughly 39 k's to go, you then have lots of downhill, almost all of the last 39 Ks. I actually should work it out, but it's about 28, 29 Ks of the last 39 Ks of Comrades are downhill. And some of it is quite extreme downhill. And that is really the unique challenge of the down run. So much damage is done. And that is where, and what I mean by is eccentric loading. So that is in the strength training section, Devlin's going to unpack slightly what exactly what eccentric loading means. But for the most simple explanation I can tell you is that is the pounding and the hammering that your legs take. And it's like you get whacked with a cricket bat. So essentially, that is really what we are trying to prepare for and get you ready for. And that's why for the down run, I'm going to repeat this a few times through the webinar. And that's also why I've brought Dev onto the webinar to talk about strength, is because strength training is as important as the training you need to do for the down run. Okay, we will cover the route in painstaking detail on the very last webinar of our series of webinars. So yeah, be sure as a novice to come and listen to that so you can be really properly mentally prepared for what's coming up. And then this is so important, this last line here: do enough, never too much. That is, for a novice, something you really need to prepare. You need to keep repeating yourself. It's going to be so easy for you to get sucked into the insanity in your club where people are telling you have to run 100 kilometers a week. Okay, we're going to start unpacking for you right now what you are trying to aim for in the next 2 months. Okay, and that's really important, is that you try and work towards what is enough. Part of that, and I didn't make a slide on this, which I'm pretty sorry about, but I am going to talk you through it. So when we get onto the slide where I start talking about the medals and how many kilometers plus minus you should be aiming for, I'm also going to go into making sure you select the right plan for you. Okay, to be successful at Comrades, there are 3 really important ingredients. Okay, you need to put yourself onto the appropriate plan. That is the first and most important step, making sure that the training you're doing is right for you. Secondly, is to prepare properly, and that includes the strength training. So the preparation for the race is key. And then the third aspect is getting your race day right, pacing yourself properly for what you have been training for, and setting out your plan. And then, of course, I mean, I guess it is a fourth element, but it's still part of the third, and that is that you then actually have to stick to that on race day. Right. Okay. So that is what we are preparing for. This is literally the most important stat that I can share with a novice Comrades runner, with any runner, but I'm in particular sharing it with the novices. Okay, because in 2016, we had the highest dropout rates in many years. Look, the weather obviously played into that quite a lot. It was a very hot day, and there was also a berg wind that was blowing into the people's faces. But it was the highest dropouts in years. So we sent out a survey to every single Comrades runner that didn't finish. And we got 1,000 replies back. So that is powerful stats. I mean, if you know anything about statistics, that is gold, what we got there. And 641 respondents who did not finish in 2016 started Comrades injured. They started with an injury. And so I want to go back to that's why that was in italics. There are a few things, maybe you're going to get tired of me saying them today, but there's a couple of things that are so important that I've got to keep repeating them, because when you leave tonight, there's some key concepts that we've got to leave here with. Less is more, and you must do strength. Okay? Again, Dev's going to unpack the why of strength. I don't want to take from his here's part of the presentation, and I want to start getting into where you should be now. Okay, and this is where I did leave out a slide, but I'm gonna make up for it and make sure that you have all the information that you need. Okay, where should you be right now? Okay, you should be training consistently. You don't want to be training too hard. One of the things that I have noticed with Comrades moving out to August, people almost carried on in January as if Comrades was still in June. So there are a lot of people out there that have been training really hard for a really long period of time. And that is a high injury risk because we can't just keep training over and over again. But much more important, it's a high risk of becoming mentally tired. And on race day, you're going to need to be mentally fresh. Okay, that is really important. And again, as the series of webinars go on, and I encourage you to listen to all of them, we're going to tap more into that kind of thing. Okay. If you have hopefully qualified, if you haven't, it's really not a train smash. There is still time to qualify. You need to submit. I said there that the cutoff for qualifying is the 12th of July. That's not entirely accurate. It's the submission of your qualifying time. Any information that you need to give to Comrades, changing where you're going to pick up your registration pack, changing of seating, submitting your qualifying time, changes of club, etc., etc. All those things. The cutoff for that is the 12th of July, changing of shirt sizes, etc., etc. All right. This is a key thing. If you haven't qualified yet, it's not a train smash, okay? And for a second here, I'm going to separate the people that are going for an 11:45 to 12 hour from everybody else, okay? The later you qualify for Comrades, the easier you need to run in your qualifying effort and the closer to a training run you need to make it. Okay, that's very easy to tell someone who's training for a silver medal because they run a marathon in 3 hours. So if I tell them to run it in 3.5 hours, piece of cake, of course they can go and run it easy. Okay, if you are in the 11:45 category and you need to run a sub 450 marathon and you're struggling to do that, well, then we need to get you qualified, and then you've got to manage your recovery. It's critical that after the qualifying effort, you have to give yourself at least a week, because if you just start training again straight after that qualifying effort, you're going to get injured. Okay, so now that I've started talking a little bit about times, before I jump into your goals for May, it's really important that you've selected the correct Comrades training plan for you. Okay. Now, the best indicator is your marathon time. So if you've run a marathon, it's pretty easy to then decide what plan suits you correctly. If you are a sub 3 hour marathoner, that will put you in the top 5% of the Comrades field, and you should be capable of running a sub 3 hour marathon, a sub 85 minute half, and very close to 40 or under for a 10 kilometer. Okay. If you're not so sure about times, you don't understand what all that means, honestly, you're in the top 5% of the Comrades field. So that's you in a normal year. That means you're finishing around 200 out of 2,000 and something. Okay. So that means that when you run in a small race, you probably need to be in the top 20, maybe 30 people. Okay. The next medal that's available on a time cutoff is the Bill Rowan medal. Okay. And that is, sorry, I'm not going to talk about Wally Hayward's and Isabel Roche Kelly's, because those are for the 1% of the field. Okay. And you're welcome to pop a message in the chat if you are one of those. I will then happily answer it later on in the call. If you are chasing a Bill Rowan, now Bill Rowan is under 9 hours at Comrades. That is still an incredibly good Comrades. That will put you in the top 23 to 25% of the Comrades field. You need to be running very close to 3.5 hours for a marathon, around about 140 to 142 for a half marathon, and in the region of 42 2.5, 43 minutes for a 10K. That starts to give you your ballpark for a bull roan. The Robert Machali, which is a sub 10-hour Comrades, you are looking at being at around 4 hours. So you should be just under 4 hours for the marathon, very close to a 1 hour 50 half marathon, and probably in the 50 50-minute range for a 10K. Next up is a bronze medal. That's for a sub 11, and you want to be around 425. 425 for a marathon. For a half marathon, that means around 205-ish in that sort of region. And then for a 10K, probably in the 1 hour region, just under 1 hour. And then finally, for your finishes, it's pretty much everyone else. But in essence, what you're targeting is a 450 marathon. Okay, right. So now that you've got an idea of what plan you should be training for, and guys, back to that slide on the injury. If you are a finisher, following the bull roan or the Robert Machali or the bronze is not going to give you more buffer. It's going to almost certainly end with you being injured. And if you are injured, as you saw on that slide, 60% of the 64% of the runners who did not finish Comrades didn't finish because they started with an injury. Don't train on a plan that is beyond your ability. Okay. Right now in May, we're not too concerned about intensity. Okay. We just want to be creating that habit. We want to be consistent. We should be training now, and we are building up slowly. Those are the core ingredients for May. Okay. Comrades training starts in June. So if you've spoken to old Comrades runners, if you've been around old Comrades runners, we always used to say, Comrades training starts on the 1st of March, okay? The new 1st of March is the 1st of June. Comrades training is only starting in a couple of weeks' time. As we go through this journey, the long run is what you're preparing for. We are preparing to be on our feet for a long time. We are preparing the mind and the body to be able to keep going hour after hour after hour. That is the goal. That's what we are preparing you for. So your long runs are important. So wherever possible, those are the runs that you want to manage your week around to make sure you prioritize the long, easy runs. Okay, that's very important. You can and should walk plenty on your long runs. Prepare for the race that you're training for. Comrades is a unique race because if you're a novice and you haven't done ultramarathon running before, it's a unique distance because you actually train much faster than you race. You have to get yourself used to, you've got to get your legs used to being able to run slow enough. At the expo, Brad can attest to this when he comes back. How many times has he heard me taking people's phones and getting their old Comrades results? Because when I tell people this is what pace you must run in the first 30Ks, they go, no, I can't run that slow. It's impossible to run. It's so uncomfortable to run that slow. So I asked them for their result from the previous year. I open it up, and what's really nice about the Comrades results is you get these segments, and then it tells you what the average pace is. And I go, hey, how come you could run so much slower than this at the end? So much slower than I want you to run. You can do that at the end, but you can't. So you have, if you don't run slow enough at the beginning and walk enough in the first half, you're going to do lots of walking and very little running in the second half. Okay, so we want to prep your body, prep your mind, prep your body. So you have to, on your long runs, include regular, structured walk breaks. The other good thing about having them regular and structured is that by the time race day comes, you don't think about it. You fall into your rhythm, you run, you walk, you run, you walk, you run, you walk. You time your walk breaks with your nutrition stops. So that means it's easy for you to get your nutrition down. It means that you get everything that you need, plus you get the rest and saving your legs for what you need for later in the race. And when you get tired, and this is so important, when you get tired, once again, because it's a habit, it becomes harder for you to fall into the trap of negotiating with yourself, of going, oh, I'm just going to keep walking a bit longer, because beep, my watch goes, time to walk. Okay, so you should walk plenty, and I haven't popped it on the slide, but I'm going to say it again. If you haven't started strength training yet, May is the right time to start it. The later you start it, the more it's going to impact your training, because it's going to make you sore and stiff. But even if you only started later, it's important enough that it's still worth dealing with that stiffness. But the earlier you start it, the less it'll impact your short term. Okay, so I haven't put on the Robert Machali there, but I will also add that in for you. So finishers, people that are just looking to finish Comrades, you should be in the 40. I'd say 50K a week is probably already more than you need. But the beauty of a finisher's Comrades, and I've done this many times with lots of people, on the finishers plan, if you ran between 45 and 50Ks a week, most weeks from now to race day, with one marathon and one ultra along the way, you will be physically and mentally prepared for Comrades. You will finish Comrades. You won't be injured, okay? We will probably do a little bit more than that, and there'll certainly be just those few weeks where we go higher than that. But I'm telling you that just to put your mind at ease, okay? But you want to be around the 40Ks a week. Now, if you're a more experienced runner, and this is a unique thing that I possibly also should have addressed, in South Africa, lots of Comrades novices started running to do Comrades. They didn't start running to get healthy. They didn't start running so they could play with their kids and stay active. They literally started running because they want to do Comrades. So if you fall in that category, you want to be down at the lower end, the 40Ks a week rather than the 50Ks a week. Okay. Next up, we've got the bronze. You're looking at about 50 to 60Ks a week. So again, more experienced runners can slide towards the higher end. If you're a novice and you've just taken up running for Comrades, but your ability has you around the bronze, you want to be on that lower end, okay? Next is Robert Machali, and you're aiming for around 60 to 65Ks a week, maximum 70Ks a week, but I wouldn't go that far. Bill Rowan, 60 to 80Ks a week. Again, there's that broad range there because it depends how experienced an athlete you are. But the reason 60 is there is just to let you know, don't panic. If you've got the ability, 60 to 80Ks a week for May is just fine. And then the silver guys are going to be running more. Again, hopefully this is somebody who's qualified. If you're needing to run a sub 3, you really can't afford to do that much later than the next 2 weeks. But you would probably be doing a little or have done a little bit more and now be tapering. But 70 to 90 a week now for silver is really sensible and will allow you to build up. Okay. For the finishers, then we're going to move into the low 50s, high 40s, low 50s. Again, it depends how much of a novice you are. And that you're going to kind of keep trending all the way through. So, sorry, a question popped up, but I'll do maybe 3 or 4 questions after my section ends, and then we'll stick around and do a full Q&A at the end of the call. Okay. Bronze, we're looking at 60 to 65K. So what you'll see is we're just slowly inching that up from May. For the Robert Machali, you want to be scratching 70, early 70s. Bill Rowan, we're starting to shift towards the 80s now, up from 60 to 80, up to most people getting to 80s. And silver, you want to be getting to 100Ks a week in middle of June, and we're going to bump that up in July. Okay, right. Just touching on making sure that you start out right. Okay, so that's really the importance of this slide. You want to make sure that you're in the right pair of shoes for you. So I would get myself to a reputable running store, somewhere that can give you good advice, put you into the right kind of running shoe. And once you find a shoe that's comfortable for you, I wouldn't deviate much from that. Well, I wouldn't deviate at all from that in the Comrades build-up. You want a fairly new pair of shoes when June starts. Okay, so you really should be looking now at getting yourself your pair of shoes that's going to take you through the bulk of the Comrades training. If you are fortunate enough that you can afford more than one pair of shoes through this training process, you want to get your second pair of shoes before the end of July, so that you can run them in, and on race day they've got about 200, between 150 and 200 Ks in them. That's the perfect amount of run-in and cushioning left in a shoe for race day. Okay, so once you've got your brand, you know the shoe that feels really comfortable on your foot. You want to get through the main bulk of training without getting injured. So June and July is when you want your fresh shoes. And if you're fortunate enough to get another pair, you want to do that towards the end of July. Okay. And that's the point. Sorry, ahead. I jumped ahead there, but plan ahead so you're not buying new shoes at the end of August. Okay. The mantra is nothing new on race day. As far as possible, nothing new on race day. All your nutrition, and we're going to do a webinar that focuses specifically on nutrition. So please come to that one too, because that's where we will talk about what type of things to use, and you can start experimenting with those on your long runs. And you want to get yourself some basic strength equipment. Devon's going to talk you through strength. So again, I don't want to steal his thunder there, but a lot of what you need to do to get you through Comrades, you can do at home. It doesn't need to be in a gym, but you want to get yourself a few things like some stretch cords, maybe some light weights, a step, that kind of thing is pretty useful. All right. I think Brad will...
All right, cool.
Okay.
Lindsey, awesome. Fantastic. Right, let's get into a couple of questions before we get Dev back on. Some awesome questions coming through. One from Alan wants to know, which is more important, weekly mileage or weekly hours spent on your feet?
So the answer is unequivocally the weekly hours spent on your feet. So Alan, if you know anything about me, you know that I prescribe all my plans in hours, but it doesn't matter how many times I do this, I get asked how many kilometers. So that is literally why I've broken it down into kilometers. It puts everyone's minds at ease. But if they want to finish Comrades, all they need to do is finish one of the Comrades plans, and those are in hours. It's time on feet. That's what's going to get you there.
Cool. Lindsey, sorry, I need to apologize because I popped a question up while you were busy in your presentation. I know it threw you a bit. I'm going to ask the question. I can't flash it up again, unfortunately, because it has been flashed up, but it was from Veraylen. Veraylen wants to know, would you recommend following one of the buses on race day?
So, Veraylen, the buses have a place and they are helpful. I feel like the buses have their power and their moment in the final 30 kilometers. I do find that a lot of the paces that are in those buses start too fast. And I can certainly attest to that at Two Oceans this year. I had COVID before Two Oceans, and so when I ran Oceans, it's definitely my most enjoyable Oceans I've ever done. I ran it in, I can't even remember what time, but it was it under 5 hours, Brad? I can't remember, but it was around about 5 hours, okay?
That's when you know you're a good runner, when you can't even remember a sub 5 hour Oceans. Don't listen to Lindsey.
Sorry, I apologize. That was disrespectful. But I was blown away by how badly some of the bus drivers paced their bus. So at Comrades, those pace buses generally are a lot more experienced. They do know what they're doing, but they can be very big, especially the finishers buses can have over 1,000 people in it. That makes it very difficult to get your nutrition or get anywhere near a water table. And I know a lot of people feel very uncomfortable because they're in a completely different rhythm to the bus. So I feel like buses are fantastic if you are struggling and you need someone to think for you in the last 20 to 30 Ks of Comrades. So if you either catch a bus, because that's often the likely scenario, or if a bus catches you, you are in trouble because it means you were definitely going too fast, but hang on to that bus for dear life. So I know people hate these kind of answers, but this is a real yes and no answer. So I prefer people to do their own thing, move along in their own way until they get quite deep in the race, and then it's a good crutch to have. Of course, if you are training for 8:55, 9:55, 10:55, you are very likely to be in and around a bus. And it's good to be mentally prepared for just knowing there's going to be lots of people around you. It's difficult to pass buses. A lot of people get to a bus and they have no choice but to join it because they just can't get past left or right. So yes, they are useful. They have their place. You need to ask your bus driver. So I'm sorry, this will be the last thing I'll say. You need to interrogate your bus driver. What is your plan? How fast are you planning on going through 20 Ks? What's your halfway plan? What's your run walk strategy like? Are you going to run and walk the hills? And if you hear the words time in the bag, get out of the bus. Stop the bus, get out the bus.
I love it. Lindsey, so many great questions coming. Please do keep them coming. I'm going to ask Lindsey one more, then I'm going to get Dev on. As Lindsey mentioned, we are going to stick around and do a proper Q&A as well. We do want to get through everything we want to get through tonight. I see we've got close on 500 people on the call, which is amazing. So there are going to be lots of questions today as well. Lindsey, last one for you for this round from Sianda. Sianda says, my pace for the long run, 620 to 640 minutes per K. Does this apply to hills? Some of the hills in my area are too steep and I can't even do 7. Any advice for Sianda or anybody else with regards to pacing, particularly around
Sianda,
hills?
what a fantastic question. So often, what I really love about these webinars, and like Brad said, we'll stick around and ask questions, is that often you will learn more from the webinar, from the questions, and even from the webinar itself. So what a fantastic question, okay? When you see a plan that's got a recommended easy pace, okay? So for Sianda at 620 to 640 is her easy pace. That's great. That you can look at it in a sense that that's the average pace for the duration of the run. But really what you should do is think about that. The person who worked that plan out has that as what should be easy for someone of your ability on a flat road. Okay. It will not be easy if you're going up a hill. The longer and the steeper a hill is, the less close you're going to be to it. The principle always applies. You must run easy. Now, I often have these chats with people that I train with. A hill is only as hard as you run it. On your very easy training days, if you slow down a minute a K, that hill will take you longer, but it will not be hard. And if you are running the hills a little bit too hard, so in Sianda's case, I get the sense that she's trying to reduce the loss of pace, because 20 seconds loss of pace on a hill is nothing. That's what I'd expect in race conditions. So in other words, you are pushing the hill. Then you would lose about 20 seconds a K. I would say a good number to lose when you're on an easy run is 30 seconds on a fairly gradual hill, up to a minute on a really steep hill. And the longer a hill is, the closer you'll be to a minute. That's a fairly good guide for when you're going uphill, but it must feel easy to go up the hill.
Yeah, and walk breaks are important on those hills too, because Lindsey, Comrades, they aren't. I don't think there's one hill on Comrades that hasn't been walked up.
100%. And sorry, that is the final piece of that answer, is that if you feel on a hill, you'll know when you've run it too hard. If you start getting to a point on a hill where you go, flip, this is hard, then you've run it too hard. 1 minute walk break, reset, and then run the rest of the hill easy. That's very important in your long, easy runs. Very important.
Awesome stuff. Lindsey, thank you very much. We'll get you back in a sec to answer some more questions. Dev, let's get you on to talk some strength training. As Lindsey's mentioned a couple of times, you didn't want to steal your thunder, but I think we've driven that point home a few times, that strength training, particularly for the Comrades. I mean, it's important for both, but the down run, it becomes a non-negotiable. I'm going to let you take it away. Why is strength training so important?
Yeah, right. Thanks very much. So just to sort of relay back to what Lindsey was talking about with regards to eccentric loading. So just to quickly touch on that and what eccentric loading is. Lindsey actually mentioned a really good point. It's the pounding, it's the landing of every foot strike. Now you can imagine something over the distance of a Comrades, how many thousand steps you are taking in that race. And each of those races or each of those strides is an impact or an eccentric loading on the legs. The more we run downhill, and being a down run in particular, that eccentric loading becomes even heavier or even higher cost on the body. To quickly give you a breakdown or just an example of what eccentric loading really is. So if you imagine the muscle fibers in your legs, you get two types of muscle contractions. You get a concentric contraction and an eccentric contraction. Now, a concentric contraction is what's seen as a stronger muscle contraction. So if you imagine my fingers being sort of the muscle fibers, it is a concentric muscle contraction is when the muscle fiber pulls together. So there's a lot more cross-sectional fibers bonded together. It's a much stronger muscle contraction, and that is usually the push off in our running stride. The converse to that is that eccentric, every time we land, the muscle lengthens. So those fibers pull apart and are at a much more vulnerable stage. And it is at that point when we are generally quite susceptible to injury. And as Lindsey sort of alluded to, where he mentioned it feels as though being hit in the legs by a cricket bat, it really is that pounding on the muscles that you then start to feel for so much longer in our training. So the recovery and the strength training is absolutely vital to prepare our bodies to handle that eccentric loading a lot better. That ties into the point where we talk about reducing your risk of injury. So the eccentric loading being vulnerable contractions, the amount of training load that we will be taking on when we're putting our big volume weeks together and week in, week out, we really are putting the body under quite a lot of stress. And the strength training just puts us in a position where we're preparing our body to be able to handle that amount of stress, that amount of load that is being put on it, and does help to reduce that risk of injury. It then also does help us increase our running performance. And it does that in two ways. Firstly, the natural sort of structural way, where we talk about the muscles being prepared to handle the load. We talk about having a stronger base to push off on each of our running strides. And where it ties into reduced injuries is the fact that it allows us to put weeks on weeks of training. By reducing the risk of injury means we're not taking time off of running. So that's another angle where we really do start to improve that running performance. I've seen a couple of questions coming through already in the chat with regards to what type of strength training, what should we be looking at? Now, to touch on the focus areas, we generally here at Coach Parry don't necessarily only angle lower body running focused. We like to focus on whole body work, but the key areas we need to be focusing are on our glutes, our hamstrings, our quads, calves, and then in the feet as well. So the foot muscles, and this is something that gets neglected a lot. Here at Coach Parry, we've put something together that we call foot core. So foot core is a series of exercises that really focus on the intrinsic muscles in the foot. So it is the smaller muscles that help delay that fatigue in the foot, prevents the muscle injuries, and helps support the larger structural muscles higher up the leg. We talk about, so those are the key areas. So again, the lower limbs, the calf, quads, hamstrings, glutes. And then it is absolutely important for us to really be focusing on some hip mobility work, core work, and there's going to be a fair amount of upper body work that is still needed. If you think about your running posture, The longer we run, the more we fatigue, the more we tend to slouch over, and that has an effect on our biomechanics as well. So we really do need to still try and focus on core work. That's what keeps us upright and our upper body from fatiguing throughout something for the duration of Comrades, for example, and all the training leading up. When we do start talking about strength training, though, I know a lot of people start to panic and they've never been in a gym and they think we don't want to be doing strength work, we don't want to be doing heavy resistance or heavy weight work. I want to sort of lean more towards and use the term resistance training. Now, resistance training can be anything from using weights in the gym right the way down to using body weight exercises. And that is also going to be quite dependent on you as the individual and your training history. So what your ability is, how much strength training you've done in the past, how new you are to it. Resistance training, when I talk about body weight resistance, so things like body weight squats, step-ups, lunges, push-ups, those are body weight type exercises, and those are absolutely vital and really important here. And this ties into my next point of progression being important, is to make sure that we're also not jumping in too heavy. So if you are absolutely new to strength training, you've never done any strength training before, I definitely don't want you in a gym smashing heavy weights on a bar and trying to do back squats where we load in the weights. You need to be starting off at a much lower regression, body weight squats, and slowly progressing yourself accordingly as you start getting stronger and advancing throughout the program. So it is absolutely key to make sure that you start for where you are, for what your current ability is, and then working up from there. And that ties in a lot of mobility work as well. So mobility being just generally improving range of motion around your joints. And that's absolutely vital for us to be actually starting out before worrying about going into the heavier resistance work. Excuse me. The last point there I've said, so HIIT stands for high intensity interval training. Now, HIIT training generally has shown to have massive benefits for runners, and in particular for female runners, and even more in particular, older female runners. It's absolutely key to be doing high intensity interval training. Now, that is something where we start talking a bit more plyometric work. It's something where we're working for short periods of time at higher intensity, so higher reps, higher resistances. And in between that, we'll have a rest interval and then go into another interval of higher intensity training. It is key though, and this is, I really want to drive the point home, that as much as there's a lot of science and a lot of evidence that points to high intensity training being key, you can't be starting with high intensity training if you are new to strength training. You need to be starting at the basics and progressing. We generally would recommend not doing any high intensity interval training unless you've done a good 8 to 10 weeks of regular consistent strength training before getting into any of that higher intensity work. Question that comes up then is how often? So how often should we be training? How long should we be training for? The science and the literature that is out there points to 3 sessions a week being ideal. However, that doesn't take into account the amount of running volume that you are going to be doing in preparing for something like an ultramarathon or for Comrades. So for us here at Coach Parry, ideal strength sessions in your running program is going to be 2 sessions a week. We really want you to try and get 2 sessions a week in strength training. And we do understand, I mean, you've got a couple of days of running, there's strength we're trying to get in, life gets in the way, most of us work full-time jobs. So we also have a saying that 2 is going to be ideal and 1 is better than doing no session. So if you're only able to get to 1 training session a week, that's all right, as long as you are doing some form of strength training. 45 minutes is typically a good enough session. You can push that to 60 minutes. We generally get a good session with a whole body type focus work in about 45 minutes. That's plenty. And if you are doing some more of the higher intensity type training, 25 to 35 minutes is enough when we start talking higher intensity interval training. Things that we do need to look out for when we talk about strength training though, and this is really key, I talk about a safe equipment and safe training environment. Now, just to sort of reiterate really or explain what I'm referring to here is making sure that the area that you're training in, your equipment is in good condition, the environment that you are working in is safe. So an example of that, I've had athletes that are doing step-ups and they step up onto a box and their foam roller or their dumbbell lying on the floor is rolled in behind them and they've stood down and twisted an ankle, for example. So just really making sure that the area around you is safe and adequate for the type of training you're doing. A key point here is the rate of progression. So I spoke about that progression starting really easy and working your way up to more advanced type exercises. The same really goes for as you're getting stronger and you want to start increasing, either adding weight or increasing weight in each of your sets and your reps. It's important to make sure that those increments are not too big. So you don't want massive jumps in weight or massive jumps in resistance. You really need to be focusing on small progressions, and it's really the small progressions week in, week out that is where the bigger gains are going to come from than you trying to jump too quickly, getting injured, and then not being able to train for 2 weeks and having to almost start back at zero. And then the absolute fundamental for us really comes down to the technique. Everything that you do from a strength training point of view, if the technique is not right, you are at a massive risk of injuring yourself. So we drive home, we are sticklers for technique. We drive home the importance of doing things properly, correct technique. It is generally advised to make sure or to try and work with someone that's either watching you, a personal trainer, a strength and conditioning specialist. If you don't have access to that, a really good tip is to try and do these exercises either in front of a mirror or even put a camera on you. You'll be surprised how often you think you're doing something perfectly until you see yourself on camera, and then you start to realize how far off your technique actually is. So from a safety point of view, technique is key. And then just lastly, when should we be looking, or where should we be doing the strength training, or when should we be looking at stopping strength training before race day? So it's important that in our recovery weeks, so remember with any of our training plans, we really want to build cycles. So you're not always loading. There comes a time where we do work on recovery weeks, so reduce the volume, reduce the intensity a little bit. And it's important there that we reduce our strength training to maybe even just one session a week in those recovery weeks. It is also important, Lindsey spoke about, we'll have some of those weeks where we're doing the long run, some of the weeks where we're doing really high volume of work. So those big training weeks, it's recommended that we reduce the strength training so that we're fresh enough to take on those long runs. And that actually ties in quite well with if you still need to qualify. So if you still need to qualify, definitely in race week, you don't want to be doing any strength work. Possibly the Wednesday before would be the last strength session that you would do. So it is key just to make sure that you reduce that load before either you're qualifying or any other races you might be doing, as well as the long runs. And then when we do get into the taper period just before Comrades, we recommend stopping all strength training 10 days out from Comrades. You will stop doing strength training and obviously then start to allow the body to freshen up and make sure that it's just really the running that's going forward and getting you ready. You would have done all the work by then. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Awesome stuff, Dev. That is amazing. Some great comments and questions coming through in the chat. Yeah, as Dev said, we are sticklers for technique. That's why we live stream 4 classes at Coach Parry every single week, so our coaches, Dev and Shona and the rest of the team, can keep an eye on you. But we have also put together an example of a strength training plan for you as well. So if you want to download that, you can do that right now. Let me just share that so that you can click on the link. You can download that. You can see Dev wears his awesome socks in our live strength classes. So if you want to grab that, you can save that link. You can. That's a good example of some of the exercises you should be doing. Dev, some of the questions that have come through are awesome. I'm going to kill 3 birds with 1 stone because they're all the same question. Mandla raised it first. Mandla saying, can you use static bike as part of your strength training? So riding bike. Trent was asking the same thing. Would you consider cycling to be strength training? Well, at least one of the 2 sessions. And then I think it was Claudia asking as well. Is cycling considered strength training?
Yeah, so all really good questions. My short answer to that is no. So cycling, swimming, the lower impact type of sports, we refer to that as cross training. So really good forms of cross training, and cross training comes in where if you're starting to potentially the legs are struggling to recover, you might be picking up a little bit of a niggle here and there. We then can look at maybe doing a swim or a cycle in place of one of your runs to reduce the load on the legs, or as a recovery type session. So those cross training sessions are really good, but they don't necessarily replace the fundamentals of strength work, the resistance work that we're looking for. I'm going to maybe preempt it, but we often do then also get the question on things like yoga and Pilates. Do those work as strength training? Now, yoga and Pilates are really good forms of strength training, but as a more, I don't want to say basic level, they do have an element of strength to them, but they are still not necessarily going to replace your conventional strength resistance training work. So while I am a fan of things like Pilates, really good for that mobility and range of motion, it is still key for us to be doing some fundamental strength work with that over and above.
Yeah, absolutely. This is just a comment from Shirley. If you want to add anything on here, you're more than welcome to, Dev. Shirley saying foot core, that's new to me. I think it explains the suffering she went through at the recent 2 Oceans. Everything else was okay, but for the first time in 7 years of distance running, she suffered foot pains. Foot core is a game changer. We've just seen it over and over and over, Dev.
Yeah, and very often, Shirley, these are, I often get when I introduce this to some of our athletes, they sort of look at me and roll their eyes a little bit because they seem like pretty silly exercises. We're talking things where you're sitting watching me in this webinar and just curling your toes back and forth, scrunching a towel underneath your foot, keeping your foot flat on the floor and isolating, just lifting your big toe up and down. And those, they seem like absolutely silly exercises. But I can assure you, if you're doing those quite regularly, the intrinsic muscles and the small little fine muscles that we often and more often than not absolutely neglect, those are the muscles that help support the Achilles, the tendons, the areas around the ankles, up into the calf, and the more structural muscles as well. So those are absolutely fundamental for us.
Cool. I'm going to combine another 2 questions to get a double whammy in here for you, Dev. One from Carl. Carl wants to know what days should we be doing strength training? And then there were actually quite a few people asking it. But Willem, I think, was the first asking, should we be doing strength training before or after we go out and run?
Yeah, so maybe actually let me answer that first. So if you are doing strength on the same day as a run, it's really up to you whether you prefer to do the strength before or after. There's no ideal or there's no recommended way. In the ideal situation, I would prefer you trying to split those sessions. So making sure one of the sessions are in the morning, one is in the afternoon, so that there's a couple of hours of recovery between the 2. That doesn't always work for everyone with our jobs. And if you are doing those sessions one straight after the other, it's completely up to you whether or not you would like to do the strength first or the run first. Lindsey might want to chip in, but I know Lindsey we often joke with him. Lindsey sees his strength training as his vegetables. So he tries to get the strength training out the way and rewards himself with a run afterwards as his dessert. I see he's just come back on screen.
You've got to eat your vegetables before you can have your dessert.
So exactly. So it's a running joke here where we're trying to often get Linz into our live strength classes. So that really is up to you. And then Brad, sorry, just remind me the second question to that was?
It was about what days should you be doing it.
That's it. Sorry. So yeah, with regards to what days, it's going to be dependent on the amount of running that you are doing in your training program. We say we want 2 sessions a week. Ideally, if you were running on a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, for example, that strength would happen on a Monday and a Wednesday. So the days in between the runs. If you are more advanced in strength training and you are able to add a third session in the week, or you might be running an extra day of the week, you can double up and do a strength session on the same day as a run. But I recommend doing a strength session on the same day as an easy run. You don't want to be doing strength on days that you are doing interval work. You also don't want to be doing strength on days that you are doing a long run or the day before a long run. So just try and spread that out, that you are doing strength, run, and preferably make sure that there's a rest day before going into a long run and not doing strength on the same day as an intervals or a higher intensity session.
All right, cool. I just see a couple of people posting in the comments that the link doesn't seem to be working for the strength plan. You've crashed the website. No, I'm not sure why that is. What I'm going to do is share another one that goes to a different page, that it's on that page as well. It's the second resource on that page. So if you're on a mobile, just scroll down, you'll see it. It is the second option on that page. Just click on either the button or the image, and it'll take you through to that strength plan. You can get that right away. And if you want to just jot it down, coachparry.com/resources. That is the URL to get that strength plan from as well.
Brad, it might be that picture of me that you used that's broken the internet.
Cool. Dev, great question here from Bessie. Bessie wants to know, can one use hill repeats as strength training?
Yeah, so basically this is a great question, and hill repeats do form or is seen as part of running strength training. Again, I would recommend doing conventional strength work, not leaving strength work out and trying to do hill repeats, because you are also not going to be doing hill repeats in the entire training block of your training program. That'll come in certain phases. So hill repeats are seen as a form of running strength. So while you are running, you are developing a strength, but I wouldn't completely write off conventional strength work or resistance training for hill repeats.
Awesome stuff. So many great questions coming through. If you want to get access to that strength plan, you just need to click. You'll see there's an offers tab on the webinar software we're using. You click on that, it'll take you straight through. If you're watching the replay, the link will be in the top right-hand corner of the screen that you can click on. That's where the link is then as well. Dev, thank you very much. I'm going to run into some motivation for everyone now. We've been playing a bit of good cop, bad cop between Lindsey, Dev, and myself. As novices, I'm going to ask this question because I remember with my first Comrades, I was absolutely terrified from day one about what was coming. And I want to know how you're feeling in the comments. Let me know. Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are you scared? Please pop that into the chat, because hopefully the next about 10 minutes are going to fire you up and really get you excited about this journey that you are on. So for those of you who don't know my story, I know some people have probably heard this, but a lot of people haven't, because I haven't shared it much over the last few years. I see Yolandi saying nervous, Tanya's very excited, and Koleku's very nervous. Cool. So I decided, it was about 2009. I met a guy at a business meeting who had a Comrades golf shirt on. And I think, like many South Africans, I grew up around Comrades. My dad's run 11. I remember standing on the side of the road watching my dad every single year. And it was just really part of growing up as a South African. And I think that's why so many South Africans want to run Comrades. And I had this meeting with this guy in 2009. He had a Comrades golf shirt on, and he had a little bit of a limp. And I said to him at the start of the meeting, I had never met him. I said to him, have you run Comrades? And he sort of brushed me off a little bit. We completed our meeting and we got chatting. And he said to me, do you want to know the story about my Comrades? And I said, please tell me. Like any other runner, I love hearing Comrades stories. And he told me the story about how a few years before that, he ended up in hospital after having a stroke. And it was purely out of bad lifestyle choices. He wasn't active at all. He probably drank too much. He ate too much. And he ended up in hospital in a wheelchair after having a stroke. And he told me about how he sat in that hospital bed, and his friend said to him, Richard, what are you going to do? And he turned around and said to them that I'm going to run the Comrades Marathon. And they all sort of sniggered. I mean, the guy was literally in a wheelchair. He could not walk, but here, he's never been a runner. He set the goal to run Comrades. And he went on to tell me about how he got discharged from hospital and how he went home and he'd sit in his kitchen in his wheelchair and he'd pull himself up on his kitchen counters and then he'd fall back down in his chair and he'd pull himself back up in his on his counters and fall back down in his chair. And that's how he eventually learned to stand again. And eventually he taught himself to walk. And 2 years later, Richard went on and qualified for the Comrades Marathon and ran his first. That's Richard in the middle of that photo there. In his first attempt, he ended up missing a cutoff with about 20 odd Ks to go at Winston Park. It was the down run. And in that process, he did some serious damage to his back. He ended up having major back surgery. They weren't sure if he was going to walk again. And Richard had seen that movie and again came back, qualified and ran and finished Comrades. And I left that meeting, I was just absolutely fired up. I remember driving home, it was about a 45 minute drive home that afternoon, and my head was absolutely spinning. And I decided that afternoon that I was going to run the Comrades Marathon. And I got home and I jumped online onto Google and I found my local running club. I wasn't running at all. I was pretty unfit and unhealthy, and I picked up a few kilograms since I'd finished varsity. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do this. I've always wanted to run Comrades, and if Richard can do it, man alive, geez, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm physically able. I'm going to go and run Comrades. And I was just absolutely inspired, so fired up. That afternoon, I joined my local running club. But what I also did was I jumped on the bathroom scale and I clocked in at a pretty hefty 165 kilograms. If you want to know what 165 kgs looks like, that's what 165 kgs look like. And those photos were taken around about the same time that I decided that I was going to start running. And like Lindsey mentioned, a lot of South Africans do. They set the goal and they start running because they want to run Comrades. And that's exactly what I did. I started training. At the time, I was working for 947, the biggest commercial radio station in Johannesburg. And I'm the type of guy that if I'm going to do something, I have to tell people I'm going to do it. Otherwise, it's too easy to chicken out. So I literally told everyone that I was going to be running the Comrades in 2010. I was doing the afternoon drive on 947 at the time. And I was like, the whole of Joburg now knows I'm running Comrades. So there's no turning back. At around about the same time, my mom had been diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, and she was fighting her own battle. And I decided I'm going to up the ante even more. I'm going to run in support of my mom. I'm going to start raising some money for charity. So there's just another reason why I can't back out and continue training. And I remember day one, I went to my local running club and I managed twice around the sort of field hockey field. And I thought I was going to die. But you know what? The journey had started. And I then the first obstacle, obviously, and I think a lot of people on the call are probably sitting with the same sort of challenge, was your Comrades qualifiers. How are you going to run a marathon in the time you need to run in order to qualify for Comrades? Back then in 2010, it was a 5-hour qualifier. Now it's obviously a 4:50. But I remember running my Comrades qualifier. I had lost a little bit of weight by then. I was still quite heavy. I was 145 kgs, but that was me running my Comrades qualifier. And I don't know if anybody's ever run the Vaal marathon. That was the marathon that I chose to run my qualifier at. If you have run the Vaal, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It is the flattest marathon in the world. It's the only marathon that I know of. Sorry, that's my dad trying to get hold of me. Let me turn my phone off. I had it on silent. It's the only marathon in the world that is that you, if you stand on the start line, you can see the finish. It is that flat. So I managed to just sneak my qualifier in. I got it in with just over a minute to spare. So I ran a 4:58 and some change, and I was going to Comrades, man. That was in the March. I was just so amped that I've done, and then we were heading towards Comrades. My mom was getting sicker and sicker, and unfortunately, she was getting weaker and weaker as I was getting stronger and stronger to Comrades. And then shortly after that, the unraveling started. One thing you're going to pick up is you do need to do quite a bit of mileage. And as a big guy, it was quite hard. And if you're squeamish now, it's probably the right time to look away. Okay, so a few weeks after the Vaal Marathon, I went and ran my first ultra marathon, the Loskop, and I had a lot of pain under my foot. I'm sure I had a blister until I took my shoe off. And like I said, if you're squeamish, now would be the time to look away, okay? Because that was what was under my foot at the end of the Loscorp marathon. So did Loscorp with that under my foot. I was in a hell of a lot of pain, missed a lot of training after that. And we were flying closer to Comrades, wasn't training as much as I wanted to. And then I remember it was exactly 2 weeks to go to Comrades race day. It was the Sunday, 2 weeks before Comrades. And I was on air, on radio, and my cell phone rang. And it was my wife. And my wife never phoned me while I was on air, so I knew it was something serious. And she phoned to tell me that my mom had passed away in her sleep the night before. And I was absolutely gutted. I was very, very close to my mom. And the next 2 weeks between my mom passing away and Comrades race day are an absolute blur. We managed to raise a whole bunch of money for one of the breast cancer charities that were official Comrades charity at the time. We had my mom's funeral, and that's about all I remember. And then the next thing I remember was standing on the start line at Comrades. And it is one of the most amazing experiences you will experience in your life. I grew up as a kid. I was an okay rugby player, but I grew up wanting to play rugby for the Springboks. I dreamt about standing on the field and singing the national anthem and having thousands of people in the stadium singing along with you. And Comrades is the only sporting event in the world that I am aware of that there are millions of people watching on the side of the road that the ordinary, everyday person can do. So at Comrades, you're going to stand there and you are going to sing the national anthem at a sporting event where you're part of that sporting event. It is one of the most unbelievable experiences. And at the Comrades start, it is massive. It's like, if you've never been to one, it's like going to a rock concert. It's dark, it's cold, there are lights, there's music blaring, the atmosphere is absolutely amazing. And if you haven't figured it out yet, if you are just sneaking your qualifier in, so if you run just under 450, the Comrades Marathon Association gives you an unbelievable opportunity of watching everyone else start first. So you stand right at the back. You're so far back, you can't even see the start line. That's how far back you are at the Comrades start. It is incredible. And then the atmosphere, people are dancing and singing. There's this nervous energy. Shosholoza is being sung. Like I said, in Nkosi Sikelel' Africa, the national anthem gets sung, and Chariots of Fire. I mean, I hear Chariots of Fire now, and I can smell deep heat. It's one of those Pavlov's dogs experiences. And the atmosphere just keeps building as you get closer and closer to the start of the race. Then there's that famous cockcrow, Max Trimborn's cockcrow. And then all of a sudden the gun goes. And when you're starting in H-batch, you're excited and ready to go, but then you don't move. And for those of you who don't know, H at Comrades actually stands, particularly on the down run, when you start in H, it stands for Howick, because that's actually where you start when you start in the H-batch in Comrades. But eventually you cross that start line and you start on your journey to Comrades. And here's a photo of me on my first Comrades, the down run. That's me in the middle, going through halfway at Drummond. And I'm going to give you a bit of advice here as a novice. Okay, I know Lindsey and Devlin have given you some incredible advice to implement in your training, but here's one for race day. Remember this on race day, because this is going to be so important. Okay, if on race day you look around and there's no one around you, you're in trouble. Okay, and it's for two reasons. If there's no one around you, you're either in front leading the race, which you don't want to be as a novice, or you ride at the back. So make sure that there are people around you. And I look at this photo now in hindsight, there were lots of people around me. So I wasn't in as much trouble as I thought I was. And coming into Drummond, I really bombed it down to halfway to get to make that cutoff at halfway. And then the pull out of Drummond towards the back of Bothers Hill is quite tough. It's probably one of the hardest parts of the Comrades down run route. Things just fell apart on Comrades race day. And I ended up missing the cutoff at Winston Park with 29 kilometers to go, exactly the same cutoff that Richard missed his first one at. And I was absolutely, I get goosebumps just thinking about it, but I was absolutely gutted. I felt like I'd let everyone down. I told everyone on radio that I was running Comrades. I'd raised tons of money for charity, and I just felt so deflated. I remember catching that horrible bus back to the finish. It was at the old Kingsmead Stadium. Obviously, it's finishing at the Moses Mabhida now. But I remember phoning my wife, asking her to come and get me. And I remember sitting on the pavement outside Kingsmead, just sobbing, absolutely sobbing, because I felt I'd let everyone down. Like I'd failed everyone who donated money, and mostly my mom. I felt like I let my mom down. So it was a really bitter pill to swallow. But following on from that, I got involved with the Comrades Marathon Association. We launched the Race for Charity initiative. If you haven't seen it, I'd really like to urge you to raise some money for one of the official Comrades charities. They are in desperate need of the funds. It's been a hard few years for them, so please do raise some money for them. We've been blessed since 2011 when we launched the Race for Charity campaign. We've raised over 40 million rand as Comrades runners, and I say we as Comrades runners. That's what's happened, over 40 million rand for those charities. So please do consider raising some money. But then I decided that I was going to go back. I made the decision that I'd let everyone down, but I was going to go and finish what I started. And started training hard. Things really did turn around. Through the Race for Charity initiative, I got to go on the Comrades roadshows, telling people about the charities, and I started working with Lindsey, and that's how Lindsey and I sort of got together and started doing what we're doing with Coach Parry. I got to spend more time with him. I was following his training plans and his training philosophy to the letter, and it gave me access to this trusted source of information that you've got access to tonight. And I went back in 2011. And it was the Comrades Up Run, finishing at the Oval. Obviously, the finish has changed now at the Oval as well. And I remember coming into the stadium and finishing what I started. So I want to urge you that it is absolutely possible. If you're feeling petrified tonight, you know what? You're right on track. If you're feeling excited, you're right on track. If you're worried that you're not doing enough mileage, you're right on track. You are in the right place you need to be right now. What I would suggest is find yourself a trusted source. You've got access to Lindsey through this platform. You've got access to the likes of Devlin through this platform as well. Really latch on, sell out, follow the training program to a T. I'm going to share some resources with you just now where you can get access to the training plans and the help that you need. But really, just focus day by day. Don't worry about what's going to happen come August. Focus on what you can do this week, one step at a time. And we look forward to seeing you at the Expo and most importantly at the finish at Moses Mabhida come August. So let me bring Lindsey and Dev back. There's been some amazing questions. So we're going to get to some of those now. Like I said, we've got close on 500 people on the live broadcast, so lots of questions. And I know it is getting late, so I'm going to try and get through as many of them as we can. Lindsey, kick things off. A question from Ravi. Ravi wants to know, does age matter when you're adopting or using certain strength or running plans, especially for older runners like myself, over 50 and first-time Comrades runner?
Yeah, so Ravi, age does matter. I mean, it is only a number. If you ask my friend Kirsten, but yeah, it does matter. You do need to be a little bit kinder on yourself. You do need to factor in a little bit more recovery time. And very critically, if I hadn't stressed it enough yet, strength training is critical. As you get older, that's literally the primary driver that causes you to get slower as you get older. It is a progressive loss of strength that starts in your third decade of life. Good news is that you can reverse that a lot by doing strength training. That pushes your base up to a higher level, firstly, and secondly, it will then really slow down that rate of loss of strength. So yeah, as an over 50 runner, you definitely, the 4-day-a-week format for over 50 runners in most of our plans is spot on, because it allows you to do enough work, but it gives you recovery time, and you've got to do strength training.
Cool. There was a question that just popped up asking about a recording. I know a lot of people asked early on as well. We are recording the session and it will be available to watch again tomorrow. So yeah, don't stress. If you did miss the beginning or if you want to catch up on the mileage stuff that Lindsey was talking about, you're more than welcome to. Lindsey, wonderful question from Leon as well. Leon wants to know, I popped it up and then took it off. Let me read it for you. Leon was saying, I'm doing the finishing training plan. I noticed that there aren't any or many interval work or interval sessions on that training. Why is that?
Yeah, so that was really summarized in that earlier, or one of the early plans, which stresses that as a novice, and in particular a finisher, we are training to be on the move for a long period of time. Okay, that's what we're preparing you for. Your highest single risk for injury. So now I have to answer this question in two parts because let me finish that sentence. Your highest single risk for injury is high intensity exercise or doing too much too soon. But high intensity exercise, your single biggest risk for injury. Okay, so it's not that high intensity exercise is very bad for you if you're preparing for Comrades, but it's not the thing that's going to make you successful. Okay, if you can run a marathon in under 4 hours 50, okay, so let me quickly do the maths on that so that I don't make up numbers. Okay, that means you can run 42 Ks at 650 per K. Okay, to finish Comrades, 8 minutes per K. Okay, so your limiting factor on Comrades race day is not how fast you can run. Okay, if you're running a marathon in 450, you're capable of doing a 5K in probably under 30 minutes, 5 minutes, something okay. Okay, your limiting factor here is not how fast your legs can move. It is how long you can keep going for a long period of time. So we've got to do certain amounts of volume. And so with most of my finishers plans have very little high intensity exercise. So, some of them have some, but most of them have very little. The novice one doesn't for this exact reason. I want you to get to the start line fit enough to do what you need to do. I want you doing enough strength training so that you're strong enough to do what you need to do. And I do not want you getting injured. And the high intensity sessions are your highest single risk for injury.
Cool, great question. Lindsey, I'm asking you this question because I've heard you answer this one a few different ways, and I'm looking forward to I'm hoping you answer it the way I want you to answer it tonight. Wesley's asking about painkillers like Myprodol on a race day. What are your thoughts on taking painkillers?
Wesley, someone set you up, bro. You are the sacrificial lamb. This is like, this is like when you are in grade 1 and your mate knows that some guy's sister has been in an accident or something, and he nudges you and says, hey, go and ask so-and-so about their sister. Okay, that's what just happened now. Okay. So Wesley, look, I know what Brad is thinking, but honestly, I'm so glad you asked the question because it is one of my pet missions before had my time as Comrades coach. But it is so flippin' dangerous to take, especially anti-inflammatories. So Myprodol is an anti-inflammatory. Okay, it is so flippin' dangerous to take those things during ultra endurance exercise. Every time you do it, you risk damaging your kidneys. You risk going into kidney failure. I've been into the tent at the end of Comrades, absolute war zone, okay? When you do Comrades, it's probably going to be a little bit warmer in August this year. I mean, average temperatures are only a degree warmer, but towards the end of August, we can expect to be slightly warmer. We can definitely expect to be more humid than normal. So you can definitely expect to be in a more dehydrated state. Anti-inflammatories cause vasoconstriction, and they work a little bit like a diuretic. So your kidneys are in already a compromised position because we're in dehydrated state. You make it worse with painkillers. Okay, so there's a very real risk of doing yourself permanent damage. Okay, I know people struggle to wrap their minds around that because they go, everybody's doing it. But every year there are people that end up in hospital. And we don't all hear about those stories, but it happens. Somebody, and it's not one person, every year there are a number of people that are in critical condition in hospital because they tried painkillers and Myprodol. Okay, now where Brad's going with this, because I thought the fear-mongering is not working, even though it's really dangerous. People generally aren't that that concerned with self-preservation. So people will take risks like that to get themselves to the finish line. So I take a very strong kind of anti-doping line. And although taking these kind of things to get to the finish line it's not cheating in the strict sense of the word that it's illegal. One of the things that I can tell you about the Comrades Marathon, Brad was talking about how at the start, it's like the ordinary man's chance to be at Ellis Park having the national anthem sung to him or her before playing a test match against the All Blacks. It's the average human, the average man, the average woman's chance to really be part of something like that. And it is hard. I promise you now, when you run Comrades, everybody, whether it's your first one or your 10th time, everybody on race day goes, never again. What on earth am I doing here? That guy at the water cooler at work who talked me into doing Comrades, he calls himself my friend. He's not my friend. What am I? Why? And you make yourself this promise. Never, ever, ever again. I'm going to finishing today, because then I never, ever have to do Comrades again. But you will get to the finish line. You'll keep one foot going in front of the other. And as you start getting closer and closer to the finish, as you start getting down to Moses Mabhida, you will start to feel better and better, and you'll start to feel better about yourself. The achievements that you've gone through, the number of hours that you've managed to keep yourself going will make you feel like you've done something you never, ever thought was possible. And when you get onto the grass, we talk about the medicinal properties of grass. When you get onto the grass and go to the finishing stretch, all the pain will go away, and all that will be left is this unbridled pride, joy, happiness. And I always ask myself this question, is why do you want to taint that by taking the edge off the most special part of the race? Is getting yourself to the end despite how you're feeling, despite how tough the challenge was. That's what gives you the sense of pride and fulfillment. And I don't understand why people want to take that edge off that by taking painkillers and anti-inflammatories to get to the finish line. So for me, there's a very strong emotive component to Comrades that I don't want tarnished by drugs. And then there's the very real danger of ending up in hospital, of going on to dialysis. So no, I definitely feel like someone set you up there, Wes.
Yeah, and Lindsey, I think it's also important to stay. I mean, let's be honest, it's 90 kilometers you're running in under 12 hours on some crazy hills. Like, it's supposed to hurt. That's part of what you signed up for. I mean, for me, I can honestly say, hand on heart, Comrades was the hardest thing I've ever done. But man alive, it is the most rewarding thing that I've ever done. So yeah, Wesley, I hope that helps. Dev, question from you with regards to strength training. Claudia wants to know, she says, I'm going to ask you the first question, and then Lindsey can answer the actual, I thought it was how to fix it, but she's asking, should she carry on if her IT ban? Let's sort the IT ban out. If somebody's struggling with ITB, what can they do from a strength training and stretching and that sort of stuff perspective to make sure that they don't get it on race day?
Yeah, so Claudia, the thing with IT band or ITB, it's the tension there that you are feeling. It tends to be sort of what's often referred to more of an inflammatory or an overuse type of injury or type of niggle. One of the key areas that we tend to find is a leading cause of it. Or sorry, I'm getting quite a bit of feedback there. Being quite a big contributing factor is tight hip flexors. So really having to focus on working the mobility in your hips, stretching out your hip flexors. For an acute or more immediate relief, I do recommend going. Sports massage works really well. Potential dry needling, if that does work for you. So getting that release in the tension, and usually if you do get that release, it's almost an immediate type of a relief in the pain. But it is something that we need to. Most of us spend our days sitting behind a computer, sitting at a desk, and that really tightens up and weakens the hip flexors. So the hip flexors are something we really need to be focusing on, the kind of movement. So whether it's hip flexion exercises, so pulling against resistance bands, whether you're standing or lying down, a lot of stretching and mobility around those hips and hip flexors as well is going to be absolutely key.
And strengthening the glutes.
Lindsey.
Yeah, very important. Stretching hip flexors, strengthening the glutes.
And then pushing through it on race day. Claudia is asking, I mean, if it flares up at 60, is it worth pushing through?
Yeah. So look, one of the better things about ITB is that it is what we refer to as a low-level inflammatory condition, and the chances of you doing permanent damage to it are pretty low. Then they're not non-existent, they are pretty low. And there are some strapping techniques that can be done, and there will be medics along the side of the road. So if something like that kicks in on race day, then I would, like, I'm also not a big advocate of people stopping and wasting time. And I don't want to give that speech now because I'm getting all excited with all my comrades' speeches, but on the very last webinar, don't miss it. I've got a really good little save 20 minutes on race day talk that I give. But for ITB and that kind of thing, it is a good idea to stop at those points. They will be able to give you like a DP type of spray that'll take the edge off. They can give you a strapping that can actually help to stop that iliotibial band from snapping over the iliotibial bursa, and that is what's causing the pain. And they can also give you some massage of your hip flexors, which will just help to loosen them up a little bit. And then that, even if you're going from station to station, if you get some short-term relief, that will help you get to the finish. But the one thing you can be fairly safe in the knowledge of is that as long as the pain is tolerable, you are highly unlikely to do long-term damage with an injury like ITB. So it's probably one of the few things where I'd say I would probably carry on and finish, even if you have to do a bit of a straight-legged gait towards the end to stop the knee from, because it's when the knee bends and the tendon snaps over the iliotibial band. The stiff-legged, you can do the stiff-legged jaw for the last 20 Ks.
The good news is Claudia won't be alone. Claudia, people will look at you funny if you aren't doing it. So that's probably a good place to remember. Lindsey, some great questions coming through about hydration and making sure nutrition's right on race day. But I think before we get to those, I just want to let everybody know as well that we are doing a full series of these webinars. So this was the novice one, speaking specifically to people running their first one. We're doing another one on Thursday, which is more the general training specific stuff. So if you're a novice, you're more than welcome to join us for those as well. And we're going to be doing those every 4 weeks in the build up to Comrades. So looking at where you should be now, what you should be focusing on the next 4 weeks. We're going to be getting guest panelists in as well. I know we're going to be talking quite extensively about COVID on Thursday and training around it and what you need to be aware of. And then we're doing a female or a woman specific webinar, which is happening on the 7th of June. We'll be sending out the link to that. And that is an all female panel. And we are going to be talking woman-related running issues that are around Comrades. You're definitely not going to want to miss that one. That's happening on the 7th of June. So please pop that into your diary right now as well. Lindsey, let me ask the questions with regards to nutrition. This one coming in from Varelin. Varelin saying, should you start implementing your food intake and hydration strategy into your long training runs now? And if so, when should you start?
Yeah, so the answer to that is yes. You really want to start figuring out now what you like, what you look forward to, and try and focus on a little bit of a variety. So that's one of the problems at Comrades, is that, the longest training run that you are going to do is going to be somewhere between 50 and 60. I recommend 50 Ks as your longest training run. But be that as may, your longest training run is probably going to be a little north of half of the total time you're going to be out on your feet. And as I've already said, you're probably going to do that training run a little bit too quick anyway. So you also going to experience the nutrition slightly differently. But what you do want to try and do is get a variety, because if you're on the road for 11 hours, it doesn't matter how much you like the vanilla gel. It tastes like pudding. Every time I've done a marathon, it tastes like pudding. It's going to stop tasting like pudding after 6 hours. So you want to start working on a wide variety of things, and some solids. When you're out on the road for as long as you're going to be, you also want some solids. So things like peanuts, maybe small bits of drivors, salted potatoes, bananas. Some people like Chelsea buns, or pick and pay rolls with cheese on the top. I quite like a little bit of that. At about 60 Ks into Comrades, I can murder just three little salt and vinegar chips. Best thing ever. The point is, you don't take in lots, but you take in small amounts often. And the more variety you can get used to taking while you're running, obviously you're going to practice with Coke. You're going to practice with energy. I think, is it Energy or Power? I better check that. Sorry, that's not good of me. One of them is a sponsor. Thirsty Water. And I think Thirsty now also has the energy drinks. So it's going to be the Thirsty energy drinks, I think, on the side of the road. So those are the kind of things that you do want to practice with, because that's what you're going to use. You're going to take some in liquid, some in gel, some in solid form. And the more you practice it, the better. And yeah, at the second general webinar that's happening in June, we are going to talk nutrition, because yes, the sooner the better. And so we want to make sure that people have got basically 2 months to really practice and dial in their nutrition for race day. You're muted, Brad.
Amateur hour, me and my microphone unmuted. So I mentioned the next webinar that's happening on Thursday. So I'm going to share this link with you now. If you'd like to, if you haven't registered for that one yet, please do. You can actually click on the link that's on screen now, register, and this will register you for the entire series. So this novice one was a once-off. This Comrades webinar that's happening on Thursday, like I said, we'll be doing them every 4 weeks, and then the last one's 2 weeks to race day. So if you register for it once, you'll get the notifications, and it's exactly the same that we've done tonight from a tech perspective, so pretty easy to use. So you can register for that right now and get signed up. I'll leave that link on the screen as well. And then, yeah, a couple of people got on late. We are recording it. We will send out the replay tomorrow, so don't worry about that. Lindsey, the $1 million question has been asked about 20 times. I can't find one person now who's asked it, but I'm going to ask it anyway, because we've been doing these webinars for 9 years, I think. We still haven't. If we had figured out the actual formula, we wouldn't be here, because we'd be gazillionaires. You know the question. I don't even need to ask it. Unmute yourself. What's the question for?
How do you stop cramping?
$50 in your FNB bank account.
How do you stop cramping? Yes, I gotcha. Okay.
There you go. You're a winner.
Look, it's yeah, Brad and I would have been retired a long time ago if we figured out how to stop cramping. So look, so there is some good news. So it's not all doom and gloom. But essentially, cramping is caused by fatigue. Okay, so without getting too sciencey on this, essentially what happens that there's yes, I can't really I need to figure out how to explain it more simply. But effectively, there are little neurotransmitters that rush between the gaps of your nerves and tell your muscles when to contract. Okay, I think that's as simple as I can make it. And there is a slow degrading of that messaging. And what happens then is that there's a slight loss of the coordination of the process of the contracting and relaxing. And so effectively, in a nutshell, it's called cross-bridge fatigue, but it's effectively muscle getting tired, the transmission of the nerves getting tired, the way that the muscle fibers are swapped in and out. But essentially, it all boils down to this concept that as we get more fatigued, in some people, there is this crossover where the muscle that is contracting, the quadricep, the hamstring is relaxing. And there's this point where these muscles both contract at the same time. Now, when that happens, you cramp. And it's sore. Okay. And it feels like there's nothing that you can do. Okay. So it essentially is a fatigue model. What's very important is that some people are much more likely to cramp than other people. And so if you are a cramper, you are more likely to cramp. Always. Okay. So there are things that we can do that can help and reduce cramping. Okay. So it's not like, oh, well, if you cramp, that's it, you're done. Okay. So strength training. Well, let's take one step back. Preparing well definitely helps. Strength training definitely helps. And a run-walk strategy helps an enormous amount, okay? Cramping, because it's a fatigue model, if you walk early and often and you have a good run-walk strategy, that will really push out the time to when you cramp, okay? And then there are two things that you can try. So in some individuals, nutrition is part of the problem. So in other words, having low magnesium, low sodium, and low potassium, those three things can all contribute to you cramping. So if you are someone who is cramping, it is worth trying those anti-cramp tablets because most of those are electrolyte mixes. Things like Rehydrate will work. Things like Aqualyte will work. So those are good products that are worth trying. And if you are someone, Slow Mag will help. So if you are someone who suffers from cramp, it's definitely worth trying those. Okay. Research shows that roughly 30% of people who cramp is from a lack of something, potassium, magnesium, sodium. So it's definitely worth trying. Okay. For the other 2/3, preparation, strength, run, walk, break, and then you can try things like Rennies, you can try things like pickle juice, you can try things like chili extract, okay? What those things do is that they bind to sites in the mouth and in the esophagus, and those binding sites impact the way your motor neurons fire. So without, again, getting too detailed, they forcefully slow down the contraction of your muscles, which helps the muscles with the coordination and therefore significantly reduces cramp. So if you are cramping, like pickle juice, you know, the stuff that gherkins are in and pickled onions, that pickle juice, that bitterness, that helps. Chili extracts does the same thing and helps, and Rennies helps some people. So those are the kind of strategies you can implement.
Cool, great question. Lindsey, this is another one that I absolutely love, and I think we were remiss to mention this at the start. I know that everybody who's in KwaZulu-Natal at the moment is going through an incredibly hard time. So our thoughts are with you at the moment. But Eloise was asking, what if you miss out on a long run on the weekend? Is that just ticked off and you restart Monday? She says, guys, you rock. I followed your plan for most of the year, and it's been awesome. Thanks, Eloise. That's a great question. What happens if you miss a session? Do you catch up?
Yeah, so Eloise, that's a fantastic question. So I did say earlier in the presentation that we try to prioritize our long run wherever possible, and that's very important, the wherever possible. But what we don't try and do is play catch up. So with those rains on Saturday and Sunday, there's just no ways people are going to do long runs. And we're definitely not going to do 2 long runs in the next week. So that is exactly what happens. There is no single training run. I promise you now, guys, there isn't a single training run in anybody's plan. That is so important that not doing it or doing it is going to make or break your entire training block. However, catching that workout up. So if let's say you had a 2.5-hour run in your schedule for Sunday and a 2-hour 45 run next week, Saturday. Now you do your 2:45 on Monday or Tuesday when the weather clears up, and you do 2:30 and then the 2:45. And on the 2:45, you get ITB, Achilles tendonitis, patellofemoral knee pain, take your pick. But so actually, that run, never mind not being so important that it's not missable, but actually it can be the one that breaks the camel's back. Okay. If you find that you're literally missing a run every single week, then again, you need to ask the question, which run has been missed? Why has it been missed? And should I change the order of my week so that I do get in? So for example, if you find every single Sunday you can't do a long run because of weather or something that comes up, then you might want to look and go, okay, I'm going to have to move my long runs to Friday or Saturday. So I change the structure of my week so that the run that I'm end up missing is rather going to be one of my 45 minutes or 1 hour runs rather than me always missing the long run. But if it's every now and then, don't worry about it. Keep going.
Awesome stuff. Great question. Louis, thank you for that. Lindsey, sorry, let me ask Dev this question. It was about, where's it gone? It was about rebounding, asking if rebounding is a good form of strength training.
Yeah, so the rebounding will probably fit into that high intensity interval training type of session.
Silvana asked it. My apologies.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, so that's going to fall more into plyometric type work, something that's more higher intensity kind of work. The thing with rebounding, if it's something that you have been doing and you've been taking classes quite regularly, I'm quite all right with you doing it. If you are new to it or it's something you've heard of and want to try out, there always does come a slight risk. I mean, it's how you're planting your foot, how you're landing on. So I see a comment quickly pop up here. What is rebounding? So rebounding is the small gym size trampolines that you might have. And there's rebounding classes where you're holding onto handles, and there's all sorts of crazy exercises and things that are being done on a trampoline. With that comes its own risks of how you land and step on those trampolines, placing your foot, potentially rolling ankles. So I'm not opposed to it. I still do think we need to be focusing on some fundamental slower type movements. In fact, we have to be focusing on some slower type resistance movements that's really building a good strength base before jumping into things like the higher intensity work.
Cool. Thanks for that, Dev. Great question. Lindsey, question about training for Comrades. We get this quite often every year as well. Asking about living in a flat area. It was Megan's asking. Live in a very flat area. Can hill training be done on a treadmill?
Yeah, so Megan, definitely. And I mean, just in case I haven't said enough, for you, strength training will be even more important. But yeah, I would strongly encourage you to do some hill training on a treadmill. So, the question that came up earlier on the finishers plan, why isn't there any intensity? In that scenario, again, if you lived in a very flat area, even if you're a novice, then that's where the risk of the higher intensity session starts to become worth it, because you probably then do need to do some work on the treadmill. And then the other thing that I would highlight, if you live in a flat area, is I would encourage you to try at least 2 or 3 times during this training process to seek out hilly races to go and do training runs at. So when, on the training plan, when you've got to do a marathon or you've got to do an ultra as part of the training plan, try to do that. Even if it means traveling a little bit, try to do that somewhere where it's hilly, but definitely some hill work on the treadmill.
Cool. And yeah, you didn't mention it, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name with what's been going on in the last couple of years, but Alberto Salazar, American, who won Comrades. Rumor has it he did all his training on a treadmill the year that he won it. So
yeah, he was
definitely is possible
in winter with 2 meter high snow. So he literally didn't. The first time he ran on tar was when he ran Comrades.
That's crazy. All right, Lindsey, question from Porker. Porker's asking about run-walk strategy. Porker's saying, how often should you run in 1 kilometer? Because I usually walk for 50 meters at least every 3. Is that fine? What is your sort of strategy when it comes to run walking?
So that's a pretty good one. So essentially, it's always a bit of a negotiation, because most people don't want to walk and they feel like walking is like a weakness or failure or whatever you want to call it. So that's really not, that's a pretty good one. I like it. And the way that I do it, as I said, it's a little bit of a negotiation, but the way that I generally tend to work this out is to have the sliding scale where we have generally younger people and or faster. So those two things aren't the same thing, but they're also not mutually exclusive. But that's on the one end of the scale. I have this age and speed as one of my criteria. On the other end of that scale, I've got older and slower. Okay. Now, the faster you are and the younger you are, generally the less often you need to walk, and the older you are and the slower you are, generally the more often you need to walk. And that's because on the speed scale, the slower runners tend to have poorer biomechanics than the faster runners, and so need to do more walking. So those are kind of the parameters that I use. And essentially on the slower / older end, I like people to walk between 60 and 90 seconds every 3 kilometers, or every 2 miles for anyone from the US and the UK that's on the call. And then similarly, on the faster end, that goes all the way up to roughly 60 to 90 seconds every 9 kilometers or 6 miles. Now, I know those numbers don't add up exactly, but it's because whatever you choose, you're going to work according to a GPS device. So that just makes it easy. And then somewhere in between that. So you would probably equate there quite nicely to the 3 kilometer and 60 seconds. So that's a pretty good strategy.
Cool. What a great question. All right, this is more of a comment. Christelle saying, I missed quite a few runs on my Coach Parry app due to COVID. I look forward to the topic of training around COVID, especially coming back. Pace of runs versus time on legs, and which will be most important. Yeah, Christelle, we're going to be chatting lots about that on Thursday, which is great. Dev, question for you from Bowles. Bowles is saying, how often should I foam roll and studded or smooth roller?
Yeah, so
No, you unmuted and then you muted yourself again.
hopefully there. All right, cool. See, my internet's giving me an issue.
Dev just got load shed, I think. We'll get Dev back on in a sec. Lindsey, let me. There we go.
I'm back. Am I back? Okay, sorry. I don't know what happened there. Yeah, Bol, so foam rolling, look, if it's the fact that you're asking that question, I'm kind of assuming you are used to foam rolling and it is something that you do regularly. And if that is the case, it's a really great tool. Foam rolling, really nice self massage if you'd like, and it is something I would recommend doing every day quite lightly, and it's something you can be doing after every training session. You can actually be implementing some foam rolling before some of your training sessions as well, while you're going through some sort of a mobility routine, warm-up routine heading in, more lighter type stuff. When we start talking studded balls and more trigger point kind of work, keeping in mind that's obviously going to be a little bit more of a deeper tissue type of targeting. So that will also play a little bit of an effect on how quickly you recover from that, if there is a little bit of muscle bruising and a bit of pain after that. So if you are rolling too hard, so just be cautious on not over rolling. But yeah, if you're doing that every day quite regularly as a bit of your recovery routine, I'm very happy for you to continue with that. If you are new to foam rolling, if it's something that you've seen, you've heard of, it is something just to start off quite lightly. If you've never foam rolled and you do try it, you'll know that you'll see that it could be quite painful getting started. So I would recommend some light rolling and slowly working your way up into getting a little bit deeper into the tissue.
Cool, great question, Bol. Thank you very much. All right, just a reminder of that webinar that's happening on Thursday, as well as the ladies' webinar that's happening on the 7th of June. And then I also mentioned that we'll be sharing some resources. Comrades.com is your go-to if you want to find out race logistics, what you need, qualifying times, all of that sort of stuff. Comrades website. There's also Coach Parry training plans on their website if you'd like to download one. If you're looking for a more interactive experience, access to Lindsey and the rest of our team of coaches, as well as our live strength training classes, you can get access to all of that on coachparry.com and through the Coach Parry app as well. Lindsey, question with regards to double headers. This is a great question. Asking about doing double headers, running on Saturdays and Sundays. Is it important to do them?
Yeah, so Leon, this is actually one of my favorite questions because it also allows me to we don't all have all the answers, and not everything we do is based in very sound science. So I must say that those double headers came about quite early in my Comrades coach career, when I was talking to the then race director. She was then Renee Jordan. She was like, right, Lindsey, we need people to look at a training plan and go, I can do that, because people are so busy, lives have become so hectic, we spend so much time in traffic. One of the reasons people give for not wanting to do Comrades anymore, because there was like a little bit of, not a decline in the numbers, but there was a definite loss of younger people coming in, and the race was getting older and older. So I was like, yeah, of course we can do that. We limit the running during the week to two shorter, easier runs in the week, and then we pad the weekends when people have got more time, and let's see how it goes. And the following 2 years of doing that, so many people that had run so many Comrades, because believe me, I was a youngster. I'd only run one Comrades when I became the Comrades coach, and the previous Comrades coach was a hell of a nice guy, Don Oliver, the late Don Oliver, but he was a hell of a nice guy. So there was serious unhappiness that this youngster who doesn't know anything is taken over. But honestly, in those first 2 years, like the number of emails that Brad and I were receiving of people going, they cannot believe how this double long run works for Comrades, and how the Saturday run of just getting the body used to churning out the miles on slightly tired legs, what a difference it made to how they experienced Comrades race day. And so now that's literally become a feature of my coaching. And if you'd asked me before I had that experience of that this works so well, I always used to split And to a certain degree, I still do in my own training, but I do definitely do slightly longer Saturday, Sunday combos than I used to. But if you just go on the science and the way it's always been done, you'd have a midweek long run and you'd have the long run on the weekend. And that's how people had always done it. But that's the exact type of thing that people are going, geez, I don't have time to run for 2 hours on a Wednesday morning. And so that's how it came to be. Okay, well, the 2-hour Wednesday morning is now going to become the Saturday run, and then the Sunday is going to become the long run. And as I said, the rest is history. That's, I would say, one of the little pieces of magic in the Comrades training plans that you can download. And yeah, if I hadn't seen it to believe it, and I hadn't had that particular reasoning, I probably would have never experimented with that. And it just works really, really well.
Happy. Lindsey, holy smokes. And Dev, I just looked at the time. I know you've both had crazy days. Can I squeeze 2 more questions in? We've got so many. There's still over 300 people on the call, which is amazing. Question from Pelelani. Pelelani is asking, and Pelelani, I love this question. Thank you for asking it. How many marathons and ultras, including the Comrades long run, should one target between now and Comrades race day?
Yeah, so that is a really good question, and it is a slightly different answer depending on if you are an out-and-out novice. In other words, you started running to run Comrades, or if you are a more experienced runner. So the easier question to answer is the more experienced runner. So outside, hopefully your qualifier has fallen outside of the Comrades training window. So in the Comrades training window, what we're looking at is 3 runs of 42 Ks and longer, okay? That combination isn't critical. So it can be 2 marathons and the Comrades long run, can be 1 marathon and ultra and the Comrades long run. But importantly, it shouldn't be more than 3. And then here's the most important piece of information with that is that they should not be closer than 3 weeks apart. Okay. So you want your Comrades long run. If you're an experienced runner, you can do your Comrades long run at 5 weeks out. If you're a novice, you preferably want to do it at 6 weeks out. So you can work the rest of it backwards from there. 5 weeks out, then your next one shouldn't be closer than 8 weeks. The one before that shouldn't be much closer than 11 weeks. So in other words, you should be building up to almost being able to do one nowish, one in a couple of weeks' time, and 1 5 weeks out. Now, for out-and-out novices, we want to do a marathon and the Comrades long run. That's enough. Okay. For out-and-out novices, that is absolutely enough. That's what you want to do. And that will get you a finish at the end of the day.
Lindsey, I said 2 questions, but I'm going to ask a follow-up to this one, so that doesn't count. Just so you know, it's 3 types of people in this world: those that can count and those that can't. Motla, let me pronounce this correctly. Motla Pula is asking, what constitutes a long run? I think that's a great question in kilometers. How long is long?
So in my book, anything over an hour and a half constitutes a long run. So in your training week, anything over an hour and a half constitutes a long run. But in terms of when we're talking about Comrades, once you get into the meat and potato of Comrades, probably 25 Ks. So for most people, it'll be a nice consistent 25 Ks that you'll be running each weekend, probably the odd 30, and then the 2 or 3 bigger ones. Shall I read it, Brad?
Mute, Brad.
Okay, so for my friend Brad there, so that everyone can hear, I already have a qualifying time. Brad, you are on mute, and now you've taken away.
Sorry, I was on mute. Let me ask that again. My bad. Braylon's saying I already have a qualifying time, have a few events coming up. Is it worth trying to improve my seeding?
No, so I would have, yeah, look, normally and pre-COVID, we do these things a little bit earlier. So the way that the calendar is set up now, if you like, I would have pegged last weekend or even the weekend before that as the last sensible time to improve your seating. Okay, so from here on in, all those long runs, I mean, we are effectively 7 days away from when Comrades training starts. When Comrades training starts, you don't want to be hurting your legs, making yourself stiff. If you really want to get a sense of how your training's going and how you're improving, that's what the club time trials are for. You could even probably race a half marathon. But, you know, I know people who go out and run half marathon PBs 4 weeks in a row because that's how fit you get when you're training for Comrades. But that's not what you want to do. So you could look at a few time trials, and you could look at a half marathon where you go out and run quite hard. That'll do very little damage, but it'll give you a good idea of how much you've improved and help to refine your target time for Comrades race day.
Awesome stuff. I'm so glad we're doing these again. It's been a long time coming. I think the excitement is building up to Comrades 2022. I cannot wait. Devlin, thank you so much for your time today. Really do appreciate it. And hopefully people will take your advice to heart. We're doing lots of strength training in the build up to Comrades to make sure that they are ready come race day for what's in store, but also to make sure that they get there injury free, because the strength training is going to do a lot to do that. Lindsey, parting shot from you before I wrap things up.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, we had over 500 people on the call. You have put your best foot forward. You are giving yourself your best chance of getting that medal. Remember that Comrades training starts in June. Don't get caught up in trying to chase the miles. Stay away from Strava. Don't get nervous because all the other Comrades runners are running more than you. We're going to build you up slowly. You're going to get there. We want you to be fit and ready to run in the middle of August, not in the middle of July. And that's important to remember. So, yeah, thanks for joining us. I am very much looking forward to seeing live human beings soon and to meeting some of you out on the road. So, yeah, have a great evening. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Please do let us know in the chat what you're taking out of this webinar that you're going to implement in your training, the one thing that you are going to focus on. Don't forget, this Thursday, our general Comrades webinar is taking place on the 7th of June, the ladies only Comrades Marathon training webinar. You can get access to that. We'll send you those links out as well. All the resources you're looking for, comrades.com. You can also check out coachparry.com. For the live stream strength classes, the Coach Parry app with all the Comrades training plans. You can get plans on both websites as well. And yeah, there we go. That's it from us. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to catching up again soon. We will be sending out the recording sometime tomorrow, so keep an ear or an eye out on your email as well. We do end the call too. You'll be redirected to the coachparry.com website. You'll be able to read up a little bit more about what we've got access to with regards to Comrades there. So definitely go check that out. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we'll chat on Thursday. Cheers.